I'm off that Christian rap stuff. I'm on like mainstream.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I never wanted you to leave your devotion to the Lord behind. Right. I just wanted us to not be boxed in.
What's going on? You in the field with the Trackstarz, Ryan Righteous, Sean Tanner, DJ Jeremiah. We got Lecrae in the building, in his building actually. Reach Records. How you doing? With the Gumby. How you doing?
Wonderful, man. God's good, man. Welcome.
It's a pleasure, man.
Yeah.
We've been tracking with you for over 10 years.
That's crazy.
You are probably the main reason we started our show.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
I personally hated everything Christian hip hop.
Yeah.
I had to be convinced into it.
Okay.
And between Flame, KJ, The Truth, and you, I was like, okay, we might have something.
It's a little redemption.
Yeah. We might have something.
Those are some good. That's a good. That's a good entry point.
That was our path. So we were working at Radio 1, 107.9.
Yep.
And we felt like we needed something different than what was happening out in the mainstream.
Yeah.
So we loved what you were doing. So we just started our own show.
Wow.
Everything from there.
Yeah.
That's
12 years ago.
What was crazy was that the very first show we launched, we had After the Music Stops. And then we had Canton Jones, like Kingdom Business, and we were just going back and forth, and that was the whole show. So it was,
wow,
it was all we had at the time, all we knew.
Canton Jones, Kingdom Business, that was a good project.
So we just wanted to start, man, with just finding out over those 10 years since our first interview with you, how's everything gone? You've been through a lot. I read your book. You've been to the mountaintop on Billboard. Like, it's got to be a ton of stories to that. We don't have a ton of time, but I just want to get an idea of how your life has been since then.
Man, all of that's been a journey. You know, the hard part about a lot of it is that you have to go on your journey and learn and fail and succeed and process it all in the public eye.
Yeah.
So whereas whereas the average person is kind of like you go through some hills and valleys. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like your own world, and people really, they see the caterpillar turn into a butterfly, but they don't stare at the cocoon. My cocoon was being stared at the whole way through, and so it was a journey, man. I think I came into it just newly to the faith, started making music, just passionate because I had learned so much, and that's what you got in those records was this passion. But when you are when you start off, you're very, without knowing it, self-righteous, and you're really passionate about your own personal devotion. Mm-hmm. And what ends up happening, what happened for me, I can't say what happens for everybody, but what happened for me was when my devotion failed, I didn't know where my identity was at. Wow. So now your devotion fails, who are you? And I should have never been devoted to my devotion. I should have been devoted to Jesus' devotion to me in the first place. So that's kind of the full circle. And artistically, it's just been a whirlwind. I've seen it all. I literally have seen it all. Like pick an era, and I can tell you I've seen it all.
I can imagine. We're in a similar situation where God gave us a calling to reach the lost, and a lot of times there's a Christian bubble where they want you to be a certain way, and it's easy to kind of conform to that way, but there's like this tingling in the back of your spine saying, no, but God told me to do this over here. And I felt like you struggle with that battle, especially being the guy, you know what I mean? Eyes on you, what you gonna do, you gonna mess up. What was the tipping point for you from where it was like, oh, this is just fun, we making moves, to like, oh man, I feel like the weight of the world on me to make all the right decisions?
I was really mad at I remember when I feel like the whole CHH world didn't know how to handle truth and ambassadors' kind of moral failures, right? I personally don't think those should have been on display for the world to see, but we were young. Nobody knew how to handle it. Nobody had ever seen it done right, how the church should do stuff. We just didn't know. So I think when that happened, all of the community backed away from them. And then it was kind of like, well, who do we focus on? And I was like, not me. But then it was like the lens was on me, and I was like, oh my gosh. So it was this weird kind of feeling of pressure that I didn't want, because I love being in the background. I love being like, hey, this is my lane. Let me run in my lane. You guys run in your lane. And then it just thrust me to the forefront. and I hated it. I remember we had a show in London one time, and I loved the 116 movement in it. And then they kept saying, you know, they kept doing the interviews, and it was like, yeah, that's great show. Tell us, Lecrae. Yeah, it's a great trip, Lecrae. Yeah, Lecrae. And I was like, yo, why y'all keep, like, what's happening? And I remember show was like, yo, man, quit being a sucker. Stand up and be a leader. And I was like,
oh, man.
So I think at that point in time, I really felt like, shoot, I got to carry this. And I didn't want to, but I had to. You know.
Gotcha.
What has been the reaction that you've gotten from the tour so far?
Oh, the Unashamed tour? Unashamed Forever is, you know, what people don't know is like, man, that's a long story. So overall, it's been beautiful. Mm-hmm. It's been beautiful because we got to rekindle, you know, a lot of relationships, because guys have been moving 1,000,000 miles an hour in so many different directions.
Right.
And what people don't realize is that we were this small, tight-knit family. And you know, CHH was typically minority-led, minority consumers. Yeah, kind of got scooped up by CCM, and they said, "Oh, we like this." Same thing that happened to mainstream hip hop. It's just pop audiences said, "We like this," and everyone's platform just exploded to where, you know, everyone was doing so much on their own, and there was these tours. But then we realized that our audience that we had just kind of started with, you know, that diversely rich audience that we had was dissipating, and they just were in the shadows. And it was kind of like, yo, we gotta band back together and really put some energy inside of this, you know, not just us, our movement, but just the audience and the people who love hip hop. Not people who love Jesus and they're like, they'll take hip hop, but like people who love hip hop and love the Lord, and people who don't love the Lord, but they love hip hop, and they're like, well, I'll listen to these dudes or these girls. So that's been the reaction. It feels like this rejuvenation, this like awakening is happening.
I remember a story in your book where I think you were at a Grammy party.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying, like, tell me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. You said something to the effect of, like, there's like a pressure to want to fit in with those guys, right? Mm-hmm. And I imagine a lot of the artists that have come behind you, because you sparked a lot of people wanting to rap. Yeah. Right. So there's a lot of artists that send us music that they came from you, right? Yeah. So what would you say to them when they start to approach those circles that are not specifically Christian, or some that are, you know? So there's some high society Christian circles too, right? Yeah. And you start getting this attention, or you want to fit into a circle. How do you navigate that space?
Yo, I mean, I can tell you what not to do more than I can tell you what to do, because I made a lot of mistakes. You know, you look up and in some ways I feel like Lil Wayne, like nobody. I don't think Lil Wayne knew by tattooing his face and sipping lean publicly, like, he was gonna create a whole generation of artists who did that. And even like, he's a lyricist, he loved hip hop, but I don't think he knew that behind him was gonna come people who really didn't care about the culture of hip hop, really didn't care about lyricism. They just cared about autotune, the swag, you know. And I didn't know that's what I was gonna leave in the wake of my career either. Like, people who were like, I'm off that Christian rap stuff, I'm on like mainstream. Yeah. And it's like, well, I never wanted you to leave your devotion to the Lord behind. Right. I just wanted us to not be boxed in. And I didn't know it was going to be a groundswell of people following me. So when I look up, I'm in this circle of influential people, and Jay-Z's over here, and Rihanna and Meek Mill, and I'm in this circle. And it's rough for me, and I've had years of discipleship, years of investment, years of people pouring into me, and it's still rough on me in terms of integrity and identity. And so for those people who are coming behind, I say, really, you got to have a solid group of people that come with you to those places. Because you can lose a sense of self, really. And I did, you know, and people don't realize that. You think it's like, oh, yeah, you know, you get caught up in the fame. No, you really will. Yeah. And you lose a sense of self, and it crawls on you. You know, it just crawls on you, and all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, yo, why am I back in high school trying to be at the cool kids table? Like, this is crazy. So that's the biggest piece of advice I'll say, man. Don't do what I did. You know what I mean? So
when it comes to the roster that you put together now, what are you most proud of?
Oh, man. I'm really just, you know, these guys have I feel like all I did was plant a seed, and I didn't know what was gonna grow.
Yeah.
So just planting a seed. I think it's just taking the chance for somebody. You know what I'm saying? We good. We'll take a little extra. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, just planting the seed.
Yeah.
Just believing in them initially. That's the biggest thing I'm proud of, is like, I believed in someone, and I never thought it would get to this. I never thought KB would be where he is, or Gavi. It's like, I just believe RG just phew. I'm like, what is happening? So yeah.
That's dope. I'm trying to figure out how to frame this, because I know what you've probably been going through the last couple of years. I wonder if you feel betrayed at all, as a black person, right? Everybody, okay, we all black. I felt that the church, because I grew up in what you call white church, right? Evangelical church. Yeah. I felt a little hurt that our perspective wasn't listened to, acknowledged. And do you feel like I feel like you've gotten over that in some sense, but do you feel hurt at all? And how can you reconcile what we call black church with white church again?
Yeah, that's a long process and a long journey to get to where I have. I'm still in recovery. I'm still on that journey. But yeah, absolutely hurt. Absolutely destroyed, because you don't realize you're being tokenized and taken advantage of. You don't realize, this thing called hip hop music that we love, that started off in black and brown communities, that you're creating to reach black and brown communities initially. We started off when I was on tours across the we was only in front of black and brown people.
Yeah.
And then kind of CCM comes in and says, hey, we love this as well. And you get catapulted, and then you're in front of these largely white audiences, and you're thinking these are fans, but they're fans, but kind of fringe fans. They don't love all of you. They love a part of you, as long as you can stay on par with this. And this is not all
right.
white Christians, but this is a vast majority that I came in encounter with. And so, of course, I felt betrayed when all of me was not embraced. When I was kind of muted from speaking on issues that pertain to black people. But I had to learn, like, well, part of that is my fault for, buying into this idea that, racism doesn't exist within Christianity. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It still can. And so, so then that opened my eyes to it, and obviously I was hurt. But then at the end of the day, I just realized it's not my mission to convince, my white brothers and sisters that racism is alive and well within the church. If some of them get it, awesome. Praise God. Come on. Run with us. We allies. But if not, that's just not my job. And so now I just realized, man, I'm going to continue to do what I've always been doing. People need this music, and whatever ethnicity they are, they need the music. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna create it. I'm gonna talk about the issues that are important to me, and it's gonna resonate with what resonates.
Is there any way to heal it though? Is there, like, what can be done to kind of reunite the church, or was it ever united in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think the healing process is a long-term process, right? It's not gonna happen overnight. I think what you're seeing is definitely, by and large, is way more white brothers and sisters who are. Their eyes are open to, some of the complicit racism that's going on, specifically in the church. They want to kind of get around it and deal with it. But you just don't aim for convincing 100% of the people. If you get 20%, you consider that a win, and you keep going, because I don't believe that we'll ever reconcile all. It's like saying, man, when are we going to get all this sin out the world? You know what I'm saying? It's just not. That's an idealistic situation, but you just keep pushing, man. You just keep pushing and doing what God's called you to do. You celebrate the people who come and stand beside you, and you don't shun or look down on anybody else. You just keep running.
I got one more thing. That's it, I promise. How close are we to actually making the impact we think we can make in the world? Are we closed off? Is this just our Christian thing that we got to kind of make better and hope they come over to? Or do we actually have inroads in mainstream culture? That's
good. I used to think that we were just too boxed in, too closed off, too much of a subgenre. And I mean, our art was you know, I wish I would have said some things better historically. Like I wish I would have said stuff like it's corny or, you know, stuff like that, because I think people felt like I was attacking us as image bearers. I think our art didn't have the resources, and also, you know, we just didn't have the critical ears that we probably should have developed to say, hey, I love your heart and the way you're preaching through your music. We need to work on the craft. You know what I'm saying? So I should have done more encouraging toward instead of discouraging. But I would say, you know, a lot has changed, you know, even with streaming and music just being kind of like broadly accessible. The inroads that I've gotten to make with all the ups and downs that Andy's gotten to make, people like Bizzle and everybody's just, the doors have opened up to where people are, no one can say anymore the Christian rap is corny unless they're just checked out. They can't say it's corny. They can't say it's whack. There's gold albums to prove them otherwise. You know, there's just too much evidence to say the quality of the music is terrible. But I do think that we have to be intentional about, you know, creating an ecosystem and an industry that can support the artistry that is being developed. And I think that's important.
I know what you mean.
So my last question to you, obviously, you know, from a outsider's standpoint, it looks like you have very thick skin, right? Like you listen to All Things Work Together, and then you hear songs like Cry For You, and it feels like you have just taken on ridicule of the world, and also kind of what we all do, you know, as Christians, as believers, as people in the music and the genre. And how do you give advice to someone who is always stuck in their DM, or they're looking at their Twitter feed and they're looking at Instagram and horrible things are being said about them? How do you go on past that, and what's the advice that you give to other artists? And
you gotta stay out of that. I mean, that's the only thing I can tell you is just you gotta stay out of it. You're never meant to receive that much praise or that much criticism, and those are not people who love you. Those are people who just see you as a thing, not as a person. So you need healthy voices in your life, healthy voices who can say, yes, you failed. Yes, you are a walking dumpster fire. You are trash, but you are trash. And we love you. And we gonna help you to not be as trash this year as you were last year. You know what I'm saying? We believe God can still do some stuff with you. But that's not what's gonna be popping up in the comments. In the comments, it's gonna just say the most terrible things. I try not to read comments at all. I just so happened to look at comments this morning, and I was just looked at it, and someone was like, "You're the king of compromise," and I'm like, "Wow, that hurts," but I should have known better than to read that. You know what I'm saying?
It's almost like they assume that's actually gonna make you do something different.
Right, you're right.
Like I don't know you. You don't even.
You know, that's a hurt person right there. You know what I'm saying? And when you're saying that stuff on the opposite end, and trust me, I hang out with some of the biggest celebrities and athletes. It hurts everybody's feelings, y'all. Like, unless that's your aim and your ambition, especially if you're a Christian, like, don't aim to just dig a hole in someone's skin. Like, aim to be a healing salve, and tell them, man, listen, I believe in you. I don't like what I've seen. I believe there's better. I believe you can do better. I believe God can work out this particular thing. If there's some stuff you don't like, encourage people towards stuff instead of just discouraging and shooting them down.
Yo, Lecrae, man, we are super proud of you, man.
I'm grateful.
We are grateful for you giving us any time at all, man. And just want you to know that next 12 years, I hope it gets even better for you. I want you to get into film. I want you to start doing big stuff, because that's what we're trying to go to. So we'll track with you on the future.
The last thing I'll say to you is, in front of everybody, is like, what you do behind the scenes really matters. Last year we had an incident with our boy Crispy, and you got behind that, and you gathered a community, and it made a difference.
You pushed that up, like, and his goal was 100,000. He's like 5,000 away from it. It wouldn't have happened without your help and Derek Miner's help and everybody that jumped in.
I hate to hear that happen to him.
So he's recovering still, and we just appreciate the support, man.
Yeah, we do.
Thank y'all, man. Thank y'all for what y'all do. We love
Thank
y'all.
you.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, man.
All right, you're in the field with the Trackstarz, Ryan Righteous, Shantana, DJ Jeremiah. Let's go.
Yeah.
Dope.
Thank you, sir.
Hey guys, Miracle Miracle here. Thank you so much for watching that episode. Make sure you go below, like it, subscribe, click the bell, and make sure you follow us on all forms of our social media. Also, check out our website and be sure you spread the word. We'll see you next time.
We know not what we doing. Screw that, they know, let them have it, do it. Okay, I'm erratic, prove it. Never mind, got a mind that'll wind up with me in a lineup behind bars with these bars. Okay, my time's up.
Team Freedom,
Yeah.
we not through yet.
All right.
Trackstarz Music presents.
Turn my volume up, turn me off.